You are nothing but a paper character in a book. How could you ever defeat someone from the 21st century like me? Those were Celeste's final words to me before I died, her voice dripping with contempt as she stood above my broken body. She had stolen my fiancé, seized my family's fortune, exterminated my 9 generations of kin, and ascended to the highest position as empress, commanding the realm. And I, a wandering ghost with no home to return to. But when I opened my eyes again, heaven had shown mercy. I was reborn. Hola, what do you think of our story? Your support is my motivation to keep updating. Feel free to click on the homepage to see more of the full story. Please make sure you are in a comfortable position. We'll begin the main story shortly. Leave a comment below and tell us which city you read our story in. Miss, this is terrible. The Crown Prince has come demanding you cancel the engagement, and the old master has fainted from anger. The scene before me, the voices around me, everything felt so real. I truly had been reborn. I had returned to my 21st year. This was the year the Crown Prince went to Mount Typing to suppress bandits. Upon his triumphant return, he brought back a woman, the transmigrator, Celeste. Everyone said the Crown Prince treated her differently, holding her above all others in his heart. In my previous life, I paid it no mind. The Crown Prince had always been surrounded by beautiful women vying for his attention, but no one expected that immediately after returning to court, the Crown Prince would urgently petition the Emperor to dissolve our engagement. Our betrothal had been bestowed by imperial decree naturally. The Emperor refused. No, he didn't dare allow it. Shen family had produced 3 prime ministers across 3 consecutive dynasties, with disciples throughout the land. The sons of our clan could achieve the rank of 3rd scholar through literary prowess and defend against foreign enemies through martial excellence. In the vast imperial court, the Shen family already occupied half the seats of power. In my previous life, after the Emperor sternly rebuked the Crown Prince, he came directly to the Shen estate seeking me, hoping I would initiate the dissolution. What absurdity, a family of our standing, forced to vacate the position of Crown Princess for some unknown village girl from the countryside. My family elders naturally refused, and I would not consent. Looking back, this must be why Celeste harbored such hatred toward me. As long as I refused to break the engagement, she could never become Crown Princess, condemned to remain a nameless, statusless concubine. Someone who claimed to come from the 21st century, who spoke endlessly of wanting one person for one lifetime. How could she swallow such humiliation? Grape looked extremely anxious, yet my expression remained dazed and confused. Miss, what is wrong with you? Seeing Grape alive before me again, my eyes grew hot with unshed tears. In my previous life, Grape had merely spoken a few words of injustice on my behalf, and Celeste had her sent to a brothel where she suffered endless abuse until death. In this life, whether Grape or the Shen family, I would protect them all. Grape, go tell the Crown Prince I agree to dissolve the engagement. In my previous life, the Crown Prince and Celeste loved each other to distraction. Thinking carefully now, someone like the Crown Prince, whose eastern palace was filled with countless concubines, who had already been initiated, how could he possess any pure, genuine love? It was only because of my obstruction, the Emperor's opposition, and the court officials' disapproval that they felt oppressed by the entire world, creating the illusion of true love. When facing common pressure, their relationship would only grow closer. But what if that pressure disappeared? Would they still have the same deep feelings as in my previous life? I would wait and see. Grape stood at the side gate, expression blank as she regarded the man before her. One had to admit, the Crown Prince was exceptionally handsome. Half his features inherited the Emperor's heroic bearing. The other half, the late Empress's delicate elegance. But the woman beside him was far inferior, thin, short, disheveled, and dusty, though her eyes were remarkably bright, darting around observing everything. In Grape's view, our young mistress was countless times more beautiful than this woman. Grape's voice clearly carried irritation. Our young mistress is not receiving guests. Crown Prince, please return. The Crown Prince gripped Celeste's hand tightly, his expression impatient. Go tell your mistress that avoiding the issue won't solve anything. This marriage, I absolutely must. Miss agrees to dissolve the engagement. The Crown Prince was obviously stunned. What? Did the Crown Prince not hear clearly? Grape rolled her eyes swiftly, so handsome yet hard of hearing. Our young mistress said she agrees to dissolve the engagement and will speak with the Emperor herself. Please do not disturb us again. The Crown Prince stood momentarily dumbfounded. Celeste was equally shocked. She had already calculated everything. If Vivien Shen refused to break the engagement, she would run away from home and self-harm, making the Crown Prince chase after her in a crematorium of regret, deepening their feelings even further. She never expected such easy agreement to the dissolution. Now who would watch her carefully prepared performance? Miss, you should have seen her. That woman the Crown Prince brought back isn't even half as beautiful as you. Hearing Grape ramble on, I couldn't help recalling how, before my death in my previous life, Celeste had clawed at my face like a madwoman. She looked down at me from above, sneering. So what if you are the female lead in the book? With just a few small schemes, I stole your position as Crown Princess. Since you are about to die anyway, I might as well tell you I possess secret weapons from the future. Compared to these weapons, your so-called noble families are utterly worthless. In my previous life, after the Crown Prince ascended the throne and dared to exterminate all 9 generations of the Shen clan, it must have been inseparable from these secret weapons. Before I could ponder further, the door suddenly burst open and my brothers came rushing in. Vivien, you actually agreed to dissolve the engagement? That Crown Prince boy is going too far. I always said no one in the imperial family is any good. A woman as wonderful as our Vivien could find anyone she wanted. My brothers, each one a loyal son dedicated to serving the nation. In my previous life, they were falsely accused of treason and died in foreign lands. I struggled to hold back tears, afraid to speak lest my brothers notice something amiss. I could only nod silently. A cold gleam flashed in my eldest brother's eyes. Since Vivien is dissolving the engagement with the Crown Prince, then regarding the Crown Prince's affairs, brothers, we need not concern ourselves anymore. I smiled faintly, taking this as tacit agreement. The Crown Prince's great victory in suppressing bandits this time. Surely he didn't think it was purely his own capability. Without my brothers secretly protecting and guiding him, how could he have succeeded so easily? In my previous life, because I hadn't agreed to the dissolution, my brothers maintained their relationship with him and continued their covert assistance, allowing everything to go smoothly for him. Only then did he have the leisure to romance Celeste. But in this life, things would not go so smoothly. Early the next morning, I entered the palace to see the Emperor, requesting to dissolve the engagement. Everything proceeded more smoothly than I'd imagined. Though the old Emperor's face showed reluctance, the dissolution decree had already been prepared. I heard that last night my grandfather had rushed to the palace and fainted 3 times in front of the Emperor, forcing His Majesty to consent. My grandfather, his skill at feigning unconsciousness remained as masterful as ever. This was what Celeste called a feudal, vulgar, noble family. Yet she didn't understand that in these chaotic times, this was also my most solid support as a woman, however. The old Emperor still kept one card to play. He required me to participate in this year's selection ceremony. This year's selection wasn't to choose concubines for the Emperor, but to select imperial brides for the princes. The old Emperor's calculations were clear one way or another. I must become an imperial daughter-in-law. I felt somewhat troubled. The imperial family was truly not a good place. A young eunuch led me out of the palace, but suddenly stopped, his expression strange. Tristan, you clearly promised me that once the engagement was dissolved, you'd petition the Emperor to make me crown princess. You lied. You broke your word. I hate you. Following the voice, I looked toward a nearby artificial mountain where Celeste was pummeling the Crown Prince with her fists. In broad daylight, in the imperial palace itself, she dared to physically assault the Crown Prince. The escorting eunuch couldn't bear to watch and could only shrink his head, pretending not to exist. The Crown Prince restrained Celeste while glancing around nervously, terrified someone might witness this scene. He concealed the impatience in his eyes. When did I ever lie to you? Hasn't the engagement already been dissolved? Hemph, at least she knows her place, a feudal remnant. How dare she compete with me? Celeste's face twisted viciously. But why is that old emperor making me participate in the selection? What does he mean? What if I am not chosen? I don't want to go. The crown prince felt his head splitting. This is Father Emperor's decree. Why don't you defy it? Don't you have that much courage? Defying an imperial decree is punishable by death. You are the crown prince. Would he really execute you? After he dies, you'll be Emperor MMP. Celeste had read this novel and knew the crown prince would eventually ascend the throne. That is why she schemed so hard to attach herself to him. She wanted to become empress, to have one person for one lifetime, with the crown prince, to become the most enviable couple in this feudal dynasty, leaving their names in histories. Stop talking nonsense. This is the imperial palace. The crown prince hastily covered Celeste's mouth in panic, so reckless with her words sooner or later she'd be the death of him. Back at Mount Typing, he'd found her lively and charming, clever and adorable like a sprite. But since entering the capital, he only found her increasingly vexing. If not for the secret weapons she claimed to possess, still having her mouth covered, Celeste continued shouting obliviously, "If you can't wait, I'll help you stage a rebellion." Celeste was supremely confident once her secret weapons were built. They would be absolutely crushing in this era. My eyebrow twitched at her words. This Celeste truly dared say anything. Not wanting to linger in this place of trouble, I was about to ask the eunuch to continue when I heard the crown prince roar in the distance. Who is there eavesdropping? The young eunuch was scared half to death, immediately falling to his knees, voice trembling. Reporting to the crown prince, this slave is following the emperor's orders to escort Miss Shen out of the palace. Miss Shen, Vivien? The crown prince released Celeste's hand and looked toward us, a flash of amazement in his eyes. Come to think of it, since our betrothal was arranged 6 years ago, he and I had never met again. I calmly stepped forward and curtsied. Greetings, Crown Prince. This official was in haste to leave the palace and failed to notice, thus disturbing the Crown Prince. Please forgive me. The young eunuch breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing my words. My meaning was clear. We had just arrived, and none of those treasonous words spoken earlier had reached our ears. The Crown Prince's expression settled somewhat. I heard you are also participating in the selection. I nodded, afraid the Crown Prince might think I couldn't let him go, and quickly explained. It is the Emperor's decree. Before I could finish, Celeste suddenly kicked the Crown Prince, then ran away. Ran away. The Crown Prince nearly fell from the kick, managing to steady himself only with the eunuch's support. His expression showed both embarrassment and bewilderment, probably never having been kicked by a woman before. I kindly reminded him, Crown Prince, aren't you going to chase after her? Vivien, about the dissolution, I was wrong. I must go now. The Crown Prince gritted his teeth and ultimately went after her. Standing in place, I found it all rather amusing. The Crown Prince, always pampered and held in high regard, was now being beaten and publicly humiliated, yet still rushed to follow her. This differed somewhat from my previous life. Back then, Celeste also held secret weapons, but she treated the Crown Prince with utmost gentleness, never as rash and error. Prone as today, it seemed this life had changed considerably because of my agreement to dissolve the engagement. No matter how much changed, everything remained within my control. Since Celeste was also participating in the selection, why not let me play this game with her properly? In the Chuxiu Palace, all the selected maidens first had to be trained in proper etiquette by the palace's instructress. Naturally, during this period all maidens would also eat and lodge here. I arrived somewhat late. Upon entering, I immediately recognized a group of familiar faces. The Emperor had selected young women of appropriate age from all the great families. They were all my close friends from girlhood. Among the crowd, I immediately spotted Isabella Song. She was the noble consort's niece, and also the cousin of the 7th prince. The 7th prince was the Crown Prince's strongest competitor. The old emperor doted greatly on the noble consort. The 7th prince was born of the noble consort, handsome, elegant, intelligent, and clever. In my previous life, the old emperor had considered replacing the Crown Prince as heir, but because the Shen family firmly opposed it, the emperor abandoned the idea. Isabella and I exchanged pleasantries and decided to share a courtyard. Amid the commotion, Celeste finally arrived fashionably late. As soon as she appeared, all the noble daughters fell silent, everyone wanting to see what kind of extraordinary being had so thoroughly bewitched the crown prince. With just one glance, everyone looked away. They'd thought she'd be some celestial beauty descended from heaven, but she was merely this. Likely the crown prince would tire of her within days. Celeste sensed everyone's contempt. She'd endured countless such looks these past days, but remembering the crown prince's earlier instructions, she decided to tolerate it. Once the crown prince ascended the throne and she became empress, she would make all these so-called noble families disappear. An eerie silence permeated the crowd until a young palace maid beside us accidentally knocked over a teacup and immediately knelt, apologizing repeatedly. Isabella hadn't intended to make an issue of it, but before she could speak, Celeste rushed forward. Everyone in this world is equal. Why should you kneel to them? We're all born of parents. Are they somehow nobler than you? The little palace maid was already frightened, and now grew even more panicked, trembling all over. This slave must have done something wrong. Please tell me directly, miss. Backward thinking. Don't call me miss. From now on, we'll address each other as sisters. Do you understand the concept of equality? Isabella laughed coldly. How pitiful for this little palace maid serving in the palace all these years, only to encounter such a madwoman. What are you muttering? Are you bad-mouthing me? If you have the courage, say it to my face. Seeing Isabella's temper flare, I restrained her and spoke slowly. Miss Celeste, in the imperial palace, you'd best watch your words and actions carefully, lest you cause more trouble for the crown prince. Ha! You feudal remnants probably have no idea what freedom of speech means, what equality means, do you? Perhaps the mockery in my eyes was too obvious. Celeste could no longer contain herself. You feudal women, have you ever been independent in your lives? You are all parasites dependent on men for survival. Not just you, but your grandmothers, mothers, aunts, daughters, and granddaughters, all the same. Now Celeste had truly provoked everyone's anger. Isabella was the first to lose patience. Who do you think you are talking to? Do you know who my aunt is? I don't care who you are. Such audacity. The instructress suddenly appeared. Causing trouble, you'll skip dinner tonight and kneel in the Buddha Hall until dawn. Celeste was furious. Nothing had gone right from the beginning, and now even an old palace woman dared discipline her. You dare punish me? I am the future crown princess. The instructress was a palace veteran who had once been the emperor's wet nurse. She didn't indulge Celeste at all. Within the Chuksu palace, there is no crown princess. Take her away. After Celeste was gagged and dragged off, Isabella looked puzzled. What on earth does the crown prince see in her? He can tolerate such arrogance. Indeed, if the crown prince could tolerate such arrogance, the secret weapons Celeste possessed must have considerable power. I needed to find out what they were as soon as possible. After being punished once by the instructress, Celeste became much more subdued. According to Isabella, these past few days Celeste had been making the instructress quite happy. Today she made something called jelly. Tomorrow she concocted something called bubble tea things. I've never even heard of. Tell me, where does a country girl get all these tricks? I heard the crown prince brought her back from Mount Taping. My brothers in the clan said, Mount Taping is full of bandits, there are no farming households there at all. What do you suppose her real origins are? I sipped my tea and smiled without comment. The rumors my brothers had been spreading these days, both openly and covertly, hadn't been in vain. Finally, people were beginning to question her identity. Yes, Mount Taping, notorious as a bandit stronghold. Where exactly did this Celeste come from? Isabella was quite indignant. Now the instructress looked favorably upon Celeste and constantly praised her. You should have seen how the instructress had barely finished punishing her when the crown prince showed up. He really does care about her. Vivien, tell me, how are we inferior to her? If things continue this way and the crown prince actually becomes emperor one day, will there be any good days left for us? I couldn't miss the instigation in Isabella's words, but since she'd opened this door, I needn't waste my own efforts. I remember the noble consort also quite enjoys novel things. Why don't you introduce Celeste to her? The Empress Dowager's birthday banquet is in a few days. We'll all be presenting birthday gifts. This would be the perfect opportunity to have the noble consort help Celeste choose something appropriate. Isabella was clever, she understood immediately. The Empress Dowager is extremely traditional. Even new fashions appearing in the palace upset her. If at the birthday banquet Celeste does something outrageous. Just imagining Celeste's humiliation, Isabella couldn't suppress her smile. Crushing someone with praise, a common tactic in the inner palace. If Celeste's novel methods earned the noble consort's praise, given her current temperament, she'd likely soar to the heavens. Isabella's eyes rolled cunningly. Oh, and that Celeste keeps shouting about wanting one person for one lifetime with the crown prince. Do you think she knows that a consort in the Eastern Palace just became pregnant? I felt a chill. Even such private information as a consort's recent pregnancy in the Eastern Palace, Isabella knew it clearly. It seemed the seventh prince behind her possessed considerable power. I shook my head silently. Isabella's expression revealed a strange excitement. Isabella worked with impressive efficiency. The Eastern Palace indeed erupted in chaos. Grape, following a group of palace maids, watched the spectacle for quite some time. Celeste had actually stormed into the Eastern Palace demanding the crown prince abort the child. The crown prince was stunned. What nonsense are you spouting? I am not spouting nonsense. Your children can only come from my belly. The crown prince patiently coaxed. Celeste, of course, will have children in the future. You don't understand what I am saying. I said your children can only be born from me. There can only be me in your palace. Kill all these consorts, and this child must be aborted. You've gone mad. This is my first child. I'll have many more in the future. Tristan, what do you mean? You promised me one person for one lifetime. One person for one lifetime? The crown prince laughed coldly. Celeste, can you be realistic? This is the Imperial Palace, not Mount Taping. I am the crown prince, the future emperor. 3 palaces and 6 courts. That is a rule established by our ancestors. You feudal remnant, the crown prince snorted coldly. Besides saying that, what else can you say? I've already dissolved my engagement with Vivien and granted you the position of crown princess. What more are you dissatisfied with? Tristan Lee. What do you mean by this? Don't you want my secret weapons anymore? I am telling you, whoever possesses these weapons will possess the empire. Normally, the crown prince might have patiently coaxed her a bit more, but recently he'd been utterly overwhelmed. Everything going wrong. Previously, when the Shen family secretly assisted him, he'd known about it but simply felt it was his due. Now that the Shen family no longer intervened and even subtly undermined him, when the crown prince had to handle everything personally, he discovered how difficult each step was. The old emperor had already publicly reprimanded the crown prince several times in court for incompetence. Only now did the crown prince belatedly realize how wonderful it would be to marry a woman from a noble family and gain their support. Celeste came from the countryside with no connections in the capital, constantly causing trouble. The crown prince's patience was truly wearing thin. If not for her so-called secret weapons, he wouldn't want to tolerate her for even a moment. And now she had the nerve to bring them up herself? Always shouting about secret weapons. I haven't seen a trace of them yet. If you truly have capability, give me the formula. Hamph, do you think I am stupid? Celeste also revealed her true face. If I gave you the formula, would you still let me be crown princess? I am telling you, until you abort that child, I won't tell you the formula. The two parted on bad terms. Celeste was absolutely furious. Returning to her quarters, she smashed everything breakable in the room without venting her anger. The palace maid Ruby, whom Celeste had previously declared she'd treat as a friend, was now Celeste's personal attendant. Seeing Celeste so distressed, she stepped forward to offer a few words of comfort. Miss Celeste, the crown prince actually treats you very well. Please stop making trouble. Having several consorts in the Eastern Palace is quite normal. Ah, what are you? How dare you speak out of turn? Bang, without mercy. Celeste slapped Ruby hard across the face. Having spent considerable time in the palace witnessing the hierarchy and inequality, Celeste had long since been assimilated. Where was her earlier rhetoric about everyone being equal? Ruby was knocked to the ground, unable to even rise immediately. Though she was a palace maid, none of the well-bred ladies she served in the Chuxie Palace had ever struck her, not even raised their voices harshly. Yet now Celeste humiliated her like this. Celeste knew she'd lost control, but why should she apologize to a mere palace maid? Yet reconsidering the Crown Prince's earlier behavior, this palace maid might still have some use. Ruby, get up quickly. Celeste helped Ruby to her feet and offered perfunctory concern, but then her tone shifted. Ruby, do you know any physicians outside who sell medicine? Have you heard about the Eastern Palace's embarrassment? Early in the morning, Isabella came seeking me to share the news. I heard that after the Crown Prince woke and learned the truth, he went completely mad, wishing he could devour that wretch alive on the spot. Why did that wretch lose her mind? The Crown Prince doted on her so much, yet she still wasn't satisfied and tried to poison him. Now look, the Crown Prince's position is certainly lost. What Crown Princess will she be now? The imperial family valued heirs above all else. A Crown Prince who could no longer produce children, his deposition was only a matter of time. But more than that, I am more concerned about something else, I said. How are things with the noble consort? Don't worry. Whatever Celeste concocts, my aunt praises to the heavens. Haven't you noticed how she locks herself in her room every day working on things? My aunt says she is preparing some kind of stage fashion show for the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. Just wait and watch the spectacle. I excused myself to change clothes and beckoned Grape over. You've been popping your head around. What gossip do you have? Grape whispered conspiratorially. Miss, I just saw that wretch's maid Ruby secretly crying in the garden with a huge handprint on her face. Ruby? I had some impression of this maid in my previous life. She was one of Celeste's capable subordinates, and their relationship had always been good. Strange that things had changed in this life. One shouldn't watch a spectacle alone. I invited Isabella to stroll through the garden, and sure enough, before we'd taken many steps, we spotted Ruby weeping beneath a tree. Isabella frowned. Who is crying there? Ruby quickly wiped her tears. Greetings to both young misses. This slave wasn't crying. I clearly saw you crying. Isabella strode forward quickly, seeing Ruby's face already swollen red. She asked knowingly, Who struck your face? The noble consort has decreed no palace maids are to be beaten at will. Tell me who did it, and I'll certainly ask the noble consort to seek justice for you. No one struck me. This slave fell. Ruby? Seeing Ruby trying to escape, I spoke slowly. I remember you've reached the age to leave the palace. How is it that when the palace matrons came to register names the other day, yours wasn't among them? This slave. This clearly struck Ruby's sore spot. She didn't want to remain in the palace. She'd suffered through 25 years here, scrimping and saving silver, just waiting to leave and show filial piety to her parents. But unexpectedly, with just one word from Celeste, she was forced to stay. Hearing promises that once she became empress, Ruby would be appointed a female official. But who wanted to be some female official when Ruby pleaded a bit more? She was scolded for being ungrateful. And the silver she'd saved was taken to buy medicine. Medicine that, if discovered, would mean execution. Seeing Ruby waver, I exchanged glances with Isabella. Isabella deliberately said, Since you won't speak, we can't help you. I was thinking that if you'd suffered injustice, I could petition the noble consort on your behalf. Perhaps you could still make this year's list to leave the palace, but it seems you don't need it. Let's go. Isabella and I had only walked a few steps when we heard Ruby suddenly call out, Wait. Soon came the day of the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet. The emperor and noble consort both attended, along with venerable old ministers from the court who came to offer congratulations. All the selected maidens were to present birthday gifts to the Empress Dowager first, to celebrate her birthday, and second, for the Empress Dowager to examine each maiden. Both Isabella and I chose middling gifts, neither excessively shabby nor attention-grabbing. After all, the true focus today wasn't the two of us. Celeste, please don't disappoint me. Indeed, Celeste appeared as the finale, draped in white gauze like a celestial maiden descended from heaven. She performed her courtesies to the Empress Dowager and began dancing gracefully. One could tell the dance steps had been hastily learned, though smooth. They lacked refinement. Naturally, this wasn't Celeste's ultimate goal either. As melodious music played, suddenly a change in tune, Celeste spun around and absurdly shed the white gauze layer. Beneath the gauze remained only a few thin strips of cloth barely covering her chest and pale thighs, revealing glimpses as she danced. Hearing the shocked exclamations from surrounding civil and military officials, Isabella and I exchanged knowing smiles. The fish had taken the bait as planned. The Crown Prince's face darkened, glaring furiously at Celeste as she continued spinning and leaping. He said nothing, but his eyes blazed with towering rage. Perhaps such behavior was acceptable in Celeste's world, but this was her so-called feudal dynasty. Her current actions were utterly delusional. Here there would be no equality, no freedom of speech, and certainly no freedom of dress. At today's banquet, who didn't know the Crown Prince had dissolved his engagement with me for Celeste's sake? Now Celeste's performance was equivalent to slapping the Crown Prince hard across the face. As Crown Prince and even future heir, how could he tolerate his woman being ogled by others? In my previous life, Celeste hadn't made such an outrageous move, but in this life, with her relationship with the Crown Prince shattered and constantly mocked by others, suddenly encountering the noble consort who appreciated her and under the noble consort's flattery, she likely believed everyone would appreciate her unconventionality. She wasn't unaware this was a dangerous gambit, but she desperately needed an opportunity to prove herself. She wanted to prove to the Crown Prince that even without him, others would be captivated by her, Celeste. But she didn't know that the Empress Dowager had once encountered such a woman before, a woman of unknown origin who spoke endlessly of equality and wanting one person for one lifetime. With the late Emperor had even considered deposing the Empress Dowager for this woman. If the Empress Dowager's family hadn't intervened, and the late Emperor hadn't died suddenly, she wouldn't be sitting here now. When Celeste entered the palace, the Empress Dowager had taken notice, but with generational separation between her and the Crown Prince, she couldn't interfere. However, when the noble consort came to pay respects and mentioned Celeste's unusual behavior, the Empress Dowager grew increasingly alarmed. Now, seeing it with her own eyes, she could finally confirm Celeste, and that woman from before came from the same place. Simone, drag this shameless wretch away. No one present had ever seen the Empress Dowager so enraged. I'd thought Celeste would be frightened, but instead she stood her ground, utterly shameless. I kindly danced to celebrate your birthday. How dare you insult me like this? To dare such blatant disrespect for imperial dignity before all civil and military officials. Speaking such treasonous words, the Empress Dowager trembled with fury. Where did this temptress come from, daring to speak to me so? Take her away now. Seeing the Empress Dowager's expression, Celeste finally sensed something wrong. No, this isn't right. Shouldn't you be pleasantly surprised? Shouldn't you think a woman like me is different from others? Hearing this, I nearly laughed aloud. It seemed the noble consort's skill at crushing with praise was truly exceptional. Celeste, desperate, shouted at the noble consort. Noble consort, didn't you say the Empress Dowager would definitely like this? The noble consort raised an eyebrow. Empress Dowager, your humble subject initially found this woman rather strange and deliberately conversed with her several times. Yet whenever discussing her origins, she remained evasive. She claims to be from Mount Taiping, but I sent people to investigate. Mount Taiping has no respectable women. This woman is likely either a bandit or some reincarnated demon. These words struck the Empress Dowager's deepest fears. Seeing the Emperor remain silent, she declared authoritatively. Some demon from who knows where, bewitching the Crown Prince, now defiling the inner palace. Take her away and beat her to death. Several burly eunuchs came forward, seizing Celeste and dragging her toward the hall entrance. Only now did Celeste realize her fear. She screamed, I am the Crown Princess. You can't kill me, Tristan. Save me, Tristan. Don't forget I have secret weapons, Crown Princess. After such public humiliation before all civil and military officials, even if she miraculously survived, she could never become Crown Princess. From beginning to end, the Crown Prince remained silent, only wavering when he heard the words, secret weapons. Seeing the crown prince about to rise, I glanced at Ruby, who had suddenly appeared behind him. Ruby nodded subtly. The crown prince had just stood when he suddenly collapsed. I covered my upturned mouth with a handkerchief. Celeste, this time even your secret weapons won't save you. The imperial physician quickly arrived. The crown prince has been poisoned. The poison is vicious. Though his life is not in danger, the crown prince can never have children again. Hearing this, the old emperor flew into a rage, immediately demanding a thorough investigation. In truth, no investigation was needed. Ruby confessed on the spot, and guards quickly found a medicine bottle in Celeste's quarters containing the very poison afflicting the crown prince. Early in the morning, Isabella came seeking me. Have you heard? After the crown prince woke and learned the truth, he went absolutely mad, wishing he could tear that wretch apart alive on the spot. Why did that wretch lose her mind? The crown prince doted on her so much, yet she still wasn't satisfied and poisoned him. Now his position as crown prince is definitely lost. What crown princess will she be? The imperial family valued heirs above all. A crown prince who could no longer produce children, his deposition was inevitable. How is she now? I was more curious about the secret weapons she'd mentioned. The Empress Dowager took her away. You know the Empress Dowager's methods. The Empress Dowager despised women like Celeste with bone. Deep hatred. I'd heard that when the late emperor died, all his favored concubines were buried with him except one who was spared. But that one suffered a fate worse than death. Her eyes gouged out, legs severed, imprisoned in the cold palace, never to see daylight again. Celeste's fate no longer concerned me. In this life, I'd protected the Shen family and Grape, that was enough. As for those secret weapons, I heard they'd found a pile of unfinished firecrackers in Celeste's room. Whether they were related, who could say? Vivien, regarding this selection, my cousin has expressed interest in you. What are your thoughts? Seeing Isabella's testing, worried inquiry, I smiled leisurely. Isabella, some of Celeste's words, though seemingly fantastical, I found rather interesting. One person for one lifetime, I think. Perhaps I'll find that outside the palace. Isabella looked at me with surprise, then slowly smiled. Vivien, you've always been different from the rest of us, I should have known. What will you do? She asked, concern flickering in her eyes. I'll tell the emperor I wish to withdraw from the selection, I replied calmly. My family has served loyally for 3 generations. Surely His Majesty won't force an unwilling bride upon his sons. Isabella laughed softly. You are right. The Shen family's influence, even the emperor must show respect. She paused, then added more quietly. My cousin will be disappointed, but perhaps it is for the best. The palace is a cage even for princes. The next day, I requested an audience with the emperor. As expected, he was displeased, but ultimately granted my request. The Shen family's power was too great to offend over a single marriage alliance, especially now that the crown prince's position hung by a thread. Walking out of the palace for what I knew would be the last time, I felt lighter than I had in years in both lives. Grape waited for me at the palace gates, her face beaming. Miss, you are free. We're both free, I corrected her, taking her hand. In the carriage home, Grape chattered excitedly about the latest gossip. They say the crown prince has been confined to his quarters. The emperor is furious not just about the poisoning, but about how he handled everything with that Celeste woman. And the 7th prince has been receiving more responsibilities at court. I listened with half an ear, my mind elsewhere. The game was over. Celeste, who thought she could rewrite this world with her knowledge from the future, had destroyed herself through arrogance and ignorance. She'd understood the plot of a book but failed to understand the people living within it. Her so-called secret weapons, those crude firecrackers, had been confiscated and destroyed by the Empress Dowager's order, deemed too dangerous for the world. In truth, they would have been revolutionary. But Celeste's reckless behavior had ensured they'd never see the light of day. When I arrived home, my brothers and grandfather were waiting. Vivien, my eldest brother said warmly, pulling me into an embrace. You've done well. You are free of that imperial entanglement. My grandfather, his eyes sharp despite his age, studied me carefully. You've changed, girl. There is something different about you. I met his gaze steadily. Perhaps I've simply grown up, grandfather. He nodded slowly, a knowing look in his eyes that made me wonder if he somehow sensed the truth. But he said nothing more, only patted my hand. The crown prince was formally deposed. The emperor named the seventh prince as heir apparent. Isabella sent me a letter, now officially betrothed to a young general from a distinguished military family, a match arranged outside the palace. By her own choice. As for the former crown prince, he was given a minor title and a estate far from the capital, essentially exiled. I heard through my brothers that he spent his days in bitter regret, though whether he regretted losing me, losing his position, or trusting Celeste, no one could say. Celeste's fate remained a mystery whispered about in dark corners. Some said she'd died under torture. Others claimed the Empress Dowager kept her alive in the cold palace, a warning to any who might dare similar presumption. I didn't seek to confirm either story. She'd ceased to matter. My life began anew. I studied my family's administrative documents, learning the intricacies of managing our vast estates and business interests. My father, seeing my genuine interest, began training me in earnest, an unusual choice for a daughter. But the Shen family had never been bound by convention. One autumn evening, as I reviewed accounts in my study, Grape rushed in breathlessly. "Miss, there is a visitor, a scholar who has been traveling the empire, studying governance and social reform. Your father invited him to dinner, and he has asked to meet you." I looked up, curious despite myself. A reformer, how progressive of father. "He is very handsome," Grape added with a mischievous grin. "And he spoke of wanting to meet the famous Miss Shen who rejected the imperial family." I couldn't help but smile. Did he now? Well then, we shouldn't keep our guest waiting. As I prepared to meet this mysterious scholar, I thought of Celeste's words, that absurd notion of one person for one lifetime. She'd wanted to impose her world's values on this one, without understanding that true change came not from force, but from patience, wisdom, and respect. Perhaps, I thought, there was room in this world for new ideas after all, but they had to grow organically, planted by those who understood the soil they took root in. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibility. I'd been given a second chance at life, not to seek revenge, but to live freely, on my own terms. And that, I realized as I descended the stairs to meet my family's guest, was the greatest victory of all. 5 years later, the spring breeze carried the scent of peach blossoms through the open windows of the Shen family's main study. I set down my brush, reviewing the proposal I'd just finished, a comprehensive plan for establishing schools in rural provinces, funded jointly by several noble families. "Miss, you have a visitor," Grape announced, though her tone suggested she already knew who it was. I didn't need to look up. "Tell Scholar Adrian he should use the front entrance like a proper guest, not climb over the garden wall." Laughter echoed from the doorway. "Your guards have gotten better. I barely made it over this time." Adrian Chen stood in the entrance, dust from travel still on his robes, his hair slightly disheveled. 5 years hadn't changed him much, still the same irreverent smile, the same intelligent eyes that had first caught my attention that autumn evening long ago. "You are back early," I said, unable to suppress my own smile. "I thought you'd be in the southern provinces for at least another month." "I was." He crossed the room, producing a worn journal from his satchel. "But I found something you need to see." My curiosity piqued. I took the journal. The pages were filled with technical drawings and note sketches of weapons, formulas, calculations. The handwriting was feminine, frantic in places. "Where did you find this?" "In a village near the southern border. An old woman was using it to wrap herbs. She said it belonged to a madwoman who'd lived in the area briefly before being taken away by imperial guards years ago." Adrian's expression grew serious. "Vivien, these designs, some of them are extraordinary, dangerous, but extraordinary." I studied the pages more carefully, Celeste's handwriting. Her secret weapons hadn't been mere firecrackers after all. Here were designs for advanced siege weapons, explosive devices, even crude firearms, all things that could have changed warfare forever. "The Empress Dowager's people must have missed this," I murmured. "The question is," Adrian said quietly, "what do we do with it?" I stared at the journal for a long moment in Celeste's rushed notes. I could sense her desperation, her conviction that these weapons would secure her position. She'd been so focused on power, she'd never considered the consequences. "We burn it," I said finally. Adrien raised an eyebrow. "You don't want to study it first. Some of these concepts could benefit number." I closed the journal firmly. Celeste was right about one thing: these weapons would change everything. But this empire isn't ready. Neither is any empire. I met his eyes. "You've traveled widely these past years. You've seen the wars, the conflicts. Now imagine those conflicts with weapons like these." He was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You are right, the bloodshed would be catastrophic. Perhaps one day humanity will be wise enough to handle such knowledge," I said. "But not today, not in our lifetime." We burned the journal that evening in the courtyard, watching as Celeste's final legacy turned to ash. Grape stood beside me, holding my hand. "Do you think she ever understood?" Grape asked softly. "Why everything went wrong for her?" "I don't know," I admitted. "She had knowledge from another world. But she lacked wisdom. She saw the people here as characters in a story, not as real human beings with their own agency and intelligence." Adrien stirred the ashes with a stick, ensuring nothing remained legible. "She has become something of a legend, you know. In the places I've traveled, people tell stories of the mad demon woman who tried to seduce the crown prince and corrupt the palace with evil magic." I smiled sadly. "Let them tell their stories, let her be a cautionary tale." Later that night, over dinner with my family, Adrien shared news from his travels. My brothers peppered him with questions about the regions he'd visited, always hungry for information that might benefit the empire. "And what of the former crown prince?" my father asked. "I heard reports he has been living quietly in his exile." Adrien's expression grew complicated. "Actually, I passed through his estate on my way back. He requested to speak with me, said he knew I was associated with the Shen family." The table fell silent. All eyes turned to him. "What did he want?" My eldest brother asked, his tone dangerous. "To send a message to Vivien." Adrien looked at me apologetically. I told him I would deliver it, nothing more. My father's face darkened, but I raised a hand. "It is all right, father. Let's hear it." Adrien pulled out a sealed letter and handed it to me. I broke the seal and read, "Miss Shen, I write not seeking forgiveness, for I know I deserve none. These 5 years in exile have given me much time to reflect on my failures as crown prince, as a man, and as someone who once had the privilege of your betrothal. I was a fool. I mistook the ease of success for my own capability, never realizing it was your family's support that paved my way. I confused infatuation with love and arrogance with strength. You made the right choice in agreeing to dissolve our engagement. You saw clearly what I was too blind to see, that I was unworthy of you, and that our union would have brought only misery. I hear you have found happiness outside the palace walls, living freely and pursuing meaningful work. I am glad you deserved better than what I could offer. I make no requests and harbor no hopes. I simply wanted you to know that in my exile, I have finally learned the lessons you and your family tried to teach me too late, perhaps, but learned nonetheless. May you have the life you deserve. Tristan Lee." I set the letter down, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy. The arrogant prince I'd known was gone, replaced by someone who'd been humbled by consequences. "What will you do?" Adrien asked gently. "Nothing," I replied. "He has learned his lessons. That is enough. The past is the past." My grandfather, who'd been silent throughout, suddenly spoke. "Wisdom comes at different times for different people. Some are born with it, some acquire it through experience, and some never find it at all." He looked at me meaningfully. "You, granddaughter, seem to have brought yours from somewhere beyond this life." I met his knowing gaze and said nothing, but the understanding between us was clear. After dinner, Adrien and I walked through the garden, the same garden where 5 years ago we'd first talked for hours about governance, social reform, and the possibility of change without bloodshed. "I have something to tell you," he said, stopping beneath the pavilion where we'd had that first conversation. "The other families have agreed. The school project, it is approved, full funding, Support from 6 major houses. We can begin construction within the month. Joy surged through me. Adrian, that is wonderful. This will change so many lives. There is a condition. He turned to face me fully, taking my hands in his. They want to know who will oversee the project, who will ensure it is done properly, that the funds are used wisely, that the curriculum is sound. I thought you would. I told them it should be you, or rather, he took a deep breath. I told them it should be us together, as partners in all things. My heart raced. Adrian, I know this isn't the most romantic setting, he continued, a nervous smile playing at his lips. And I know I am just a wandering scholar with more ideals than sense. But these past 5 years, every discovery I've made, every place I've traveled, I've wanted to share it all with you, not just as friends or colleagues, but as yes, I interrupted, laughing and crying at once. He blinked. I haven't finished asking, you don't need to. Yes, Adrian, to all of it. Partnership, marriage, building schools, changing the world slowly and carefully, yes. He pulled me into his arms, and I realized this was what Celeste had been searching for all along, not power or position, but genuine connection, the freedom to choose one's own path and someone to walk it with. One person for one lifetime? He murmured against my hair, and I knew he was thinking of the old stories about the mad transmigrator woman. One person for one lifetime, I agreed. But not as a cage or a possession, as choice, as freedom. In a tower room of the cold palace, a figure sat hunched over a rough table, laboriously scratching characters onto stolen paper with a smuggled piece of charcoal. Celeste's eyes, the only part of her face not covered in scars, were dimmer now, but still held a spark of her old defiance. The Empress Dowager had been creative in her mercy, if it could be called that, alive, but broken, aware, but powerless. She wrote slowly, forming words she would never be able to send. I finally understand. You weren't the protagonist because you were born to be. You became the protagonist through your choices. I had all the advantages, knowledge of the future, modern ideas, secret weapons. But I forgot the most important thing. This world was never just a story. These were never just characters. They were real people, with their own intelligence, their own agency, their own power. I thought I could rewrite the plot. Instead, I became the cautionary tale. If I could do it over again. She paused, the charcoal trembling in her scarred hand, but there was no doing it over. No rebirth for her, just this endless present, this eternal consequence. Outside her window, spring continued. The palace gardens bloomed. Life went on. And somewhere beyond these walls, Vivien Shen was building the future not by forcing it, but by nurturing it with patience, wisdom, and love. Celeste crumpled the letter and tossed it into the corner where it would eventually be swept away by an indifferent servant. Some lessons, she thought bitterly, came too late to matter. But for others,